a giant feast with wine from Madeira, a volcanic eruption, and a celebratory dinner. This week, we're visiting the Portuguese community of New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. This is where we try all the best drinks and dishes from around the world at destinationeatdrink.com and here on the Destination Eat Drink podcast. This week, I'm talking with Maria Lawton, creator and host of the TV show Maria's Portuguese Table. Maria talks with me about some of the places she visited for season 2 of her show and how she celebrated getting season 2 on the air. So what was the celebratory meal like, Maria? Do you remember? Because I know you. I think you're celebrating after you find this. You find out this information. What do you go and make in the kitchen?
Are you kidding me? We went out to eat.
Better. What are you kidding me? I've been working hard.
I've been working hard.
I ain't going in the kitchen. We're going out. Before we talk to Maria, could you do me a favor and review the podcast and give us 5 stars on your podcast app? It really helps push the show out to more listeners who enjoy food and travel just like you, and thank you so very much. Maria Lawton is a cookbook author and award-winning TV producer and host of the show Maria's Portuguese Table on PBS. She recently finished the 2nd season of her show. It is now airing nationwide on public broadcasting. Maria and I talk about growing up in the Portuguese community of New Bedford, Massachusetts, where she spoke Portuguese at home and English everywhere else. Maria also tells me about the act from the U.S. Congress that brought her family to the United States and why so many Portuguese revere John Kennedy. Then we have some wine from Madeira and the Feast of the Blessed Sacrament in New Bedford. And Maria tells me about making one of the most famous Portuguese dishes called bacalhau à brás. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Maria Lawton, the Azorean Green Bean. So great to have you back on the podcast. Welcome. Or should I say bem-vindo?
Yes, you can say that. Yeah, thank you for having me back. I think the last podcast we did together, I have had so many people reach out to me after hearing our conversation, which is really great. So this is wonderful to have me back again. Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, it's great to hear. I'm glad people heard it and enjoyed it. I wanted to, first off, congratulate you on the new season of Maria's Portuguese Table. This is season 2. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. And before we start talking about it, I do want to point out to the audience something that a lot of people may not know, which is when you create a show for PBS, it's different than creating a show for any other place. Because what happens is, for you, Maria, you go out and you create this independently. PBS doesn't give you a pile of money and say, go out and make this TV show. You have to do it on your own. Find a way to pay for everything that you do, whether it's, camera people, editing, travel, lots of travel, all of this stuff. And then you have to go and find sponsors. And then, if that weren't enough, you have to go and sell it to all the stations. They don't just say, oh, PBS is going to pick this up and all the stations suddenly carry it. No, you have to go to the stations and get them to agree to carry it. So this is a huge, massive undertaking. I know because I talk to a lot of folks. I have friends who make these shows. I know what a big deal it is to get this done for PBS. So congratulations not only on the show, but for this entire Herculean effort that it took to bring it to us.
There is a slight chance I might be crazy. I don't know. You're absolutely right. I'm exhausted just listening to what I had to do. And it is a Herculean task because, you have this idea, you think, this makes perfect sense, and everyone is going to agree that, they'll support me as a sponsor, but it's not. It takes so many no's before there's yeses. There's so many people telling you that, you can't do it, or it's not going to be done, or, whatever. And you just got to get past all of that and keep your eye on the prize. And that is to get it all done, to find the group of people to produce it for you, because I have no idea how to produce a show. So I've got to find the right production crew. And I use the same director producer that did my first season. But this time around, he brought with him all Emmy award-winning people with him. So the sound engineer has won a few Emmys. The other camera person has won a few Emmys. Of course, Dean has won a few Emmys. There was the one who worked in the background doing the editing. He's won Emmys. So it was a group of men who just like their heart and soul were in it as much as mine were, because we all could see the beauty of it all. And the first season you do it, and, I did it, Brett, and I'm thinking, okay, it's one season. If it ever happens again, amazing. But I know I did one. I know there's a market for it. I know people loved it. It won awards. It did all that. But then that COVID, that thing that we all went through.
Yes.
And after, like, around the time where things are going national, that I'm receiving all these awards, I'm getting Emmy nominated. I won a couple of Telly awards. I won a couple of Taste awards, and then everything stopped. And it went from almost like, oh my goodness, how great this is, I've got to do another season, to all of a sudden absolute stop everything, because part of what we do is travel. And we're looking at, people coming from California, and then we were going to the Azores, and for a while everything was shut down. You couldn't travel abroad. And then when you did, early on, you had to quarantine for a week. So it's bad enough that I have to raise all that money to get us out there and to pay for people and all that. But now I would have to add on another week times 6 people. So the money that I would need, and not only that, I was afraid someone would get sick. And then we're in a foreign country. And we had to wait till I felt it was safe for me to bring people with me. And we had to wait. And in the meantime, it was me looking for money. And you're absolutely right. I raised a certain dollar amount, and we went, okay, we can film 4. We can film 4, because we've got 8 for another season. We did 8 the first season. We've got 8 for the second season. So we filmed the first 4, and then I run out of money, and then I have to raise more to work on those 4. And then I've got to find more money, and, let's film the next 4. And, so it was a constant of raising money, finding money. I have to tell you, I was at just before Christmas, I needed $50,000. That was my last amount for me to pay off what I had raised, what I needed. I mean, I had raised and paid and raised and paid and all that. And I was down to my 50,000. And I said to my husband, I'm like, okay, this has got to be like, we've got to pray long and hard for this. Because if this doesn't happen, because we've got to have this done to get it out for 2023, we're going to have to go into our bank account. And we did that for season 1. We pretty much paid for more than half of the season because we couldn't find enough sponsors. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to go in our, savings. And out of the blue, I get Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin' reaching out to me and saying, and I had like, this is corporate. And I had sent them messages. I had followed up. Things had like all of a sudden quieted down. It was like, okay, they're not answering my emails anymore. So I'm thinking, okay, they're not gonna. So they came up with money. And I went, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now I had still more to raise, but it wasn't the total 50. And I'm like, okay, this is, okay. So if we have to, we can. No word of a lie. It was just, like, I get a call from UMass, and it's the Portuguese, the Center for Portuguese Studies and Culture out of UMass Dartmouth. And they said, we're going through your application that you asked for, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And so she says, this is what we're going to donate for you. And it was the exact amount that I was missing.
Perfect.
It was literally like, oh, okay. So I know that there's more things that I need to spend money on. I know that there's still stuff that, little things here and there and all that stuff that I know it's going to be, us that's doing it because this is it, but it was down to the wire. And I just, I said this to my daughters because, of course, when that happened, I sent a message, a WhatsApp message for like the whole family going, I just got the rest. And it was like, what? And it, it's just like, you can't give up. You can't give up. You can't give up. Even when it looks like, it's impossible. It can happen. We can't give up.
So what was the celebratory meal like, Maria? Do you remember? Because I know you. I think you're celebrating after you find out this information. What do you go and make in the kitchen?
Are you kidding me? We went out to eat.
Better. What are you kidding me? I've been working hard.
I
ain't going in the kitchen. We're going out.
I'm going out and celebrating. So, but let me tell you, and right now we're still in the weeds. For the simple fact that, there's last minute little things there's always last minute things that need to be done. And, just yesterday it was like, okay, Maria, can you look at these, whether it's a promo or whether it's a poster that someone is putting together or whether it's, this or that, it's still like little things, working with a distributor now because, I have a distributor, and so besides, airing regionally here, it'll go nationwide. And so and that's separate rules and separate things and separate, so yeah, it continues, but it's all good. It's all good, Brent. It's all good.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the episodes that are in this season of Maria's Portuguese Table. And I wanted to start talking about a place that I'm fairly familiar with, which is New Bedford, Massachusetts. Now, you know that I lived in Rhode Island for 20 plus years. And when I came there from Illinois, I had no idea the size of the Portuguese community in New Bedford. I knew there was a big Italian community where I was moving to in Rhode Island, but I didn't know about the Portuguese community. Then I get there and there's Portuguese newspapers and radio stations and TV stations and tons of great restaurants and bakeries and stuff like that. So I think probably folks who aren't from New England, who aren't from Massachusetts, probably don't understand how pervasive Portuguese culture is in New Bedford. So why don't you talk a little bit about that just to help folks understand what was going on in New Bedford?
Well, as you know, I immigrated here to the United States with my family when I was 6 years old. And the spot that we ended up settling in was New Bedford, the south end of New Bedford, to be precise. And why the reason of New Bedford as well as Fall River, because we're talking about two separate, cities within a few minutes of each other, is that majority of the Azorean and people from the mainland came here, whether it was for fishing. We had a huge, we still do. It's one of the most lucrative ports in the United States is here out of New Bedford, Mass. So we had a lot of Portuguese that fished back in the old country and came here and continued to fish. And then the other was we were labor in the textile mills, because that is what was the major jobs for immigrants when they came here. And so we lived in a 3-family home, which is the main reason these 3-family homes were built, one apartment on top of each other, was to house all the labor for the factories. So, and when I can go further back, I mean, the Portuguese have been part of Massachusetts and especially New Bedford since the whaling time. The whaling industry, they would go to the Azores, pick up people there who were used to being on the water and fishing and all that stuff, and coming here and working in the whaling industry. So and I can even go further back into the Revolutionary War. We've had Portuguese people here fighting the Revolutionary War. So it's, we've been here for a very long time. Let's put it that way. We just assimilate very well. But in here, in New Bedford, we have a long history of the Portuguese being here. And I think if it's not, at one point, it was almost like 50% of the population in New Bedford could trace themselves back to Portuguese ancestry. So it is a very large number. And of course, my grandparents, my maternal grandparents and my maternal family was here, several years before my parents came here. My mom was the last one in her family to immigrate over here. My dad was the only one who immigrated from his family. All the rest of my family is still in the Azores. So yeah, but it's an enclave. We have a Portuguese enclave. It's you came here and you had my neighborhood was, everyone spoke Portuguese. It was almost like every village that was back there came here, and all the people within the village all lived next to each other, because my mom knew so-and-so, Senora Montego, who lives here, because she came from this village that's next to ours, and she knew the family, and like everybody knew everybody. So when I was walking to school, I had many eyes on me. So when I misbehaved, my parents knew. So when I got home, they already knew what I did to misbehave. It was incredible. So you'd walk down the street and you'd have a Portuguese fish market. You'd have several Portuguese bakeries. You'd have little grocery stores. You'd have the fabric store. You'd have, all of these different things that you would need would be all within walking distance of each other. There was no need for a car, because even the church, you'd go to mass and the mass would be said in Portuguese. And then they would go to work and everyone around them was speaking Portuguese. But Maria was, I came at 6, total immersion in school. There was no bilingual program at the time. And so I had to speak English. So outside the home, I spoke English. Inside the home, we had to speak Portuguese. And a lot of people my age grew up that way. And then, but I can say, there were plenty of people who were like, okay, we're here in the United States. We're not going to speak Portuguese anymore. We're going to assimilate.
Right.
This is it, kind of thing.
Right.
It was that. It was just it's a Portuguese enclave. And it's the same. Actually, there are more Azoreans in here in New Bedford, we have a good mix. We have people from Fayal, from Pico, from the mainland, Sarah, we've got a mix of people from the islands and stuff. When you go to Fall River, you have a larger Azorean population. There are so many Azoreans in Fall River that they've been nicknamed the 10th Island.
Okay.
There are more there. And it's the same thing. It's the people that came in the early, people were coming over in the 20s. They would take a ferry to Boston and come in, work for some years, leave, go back, bring their money, come back. It would go back and forth until the war happened. And then when the war happened, it was, first war, things changed and you couldn't do that again. And then you had more people coming in and out. And then the big explosion of the Capelinos in Fayal kind of changed our history. And that is, you had a volcano that erupted that lasted for 13 months. It covered the whole island of Fayal in ash. And so people were starving. Their animals couldn't survive. They couldn't grow anything. No one died because of the eruption, which is a miracle in itself. But people were just, could not live that way. And so, we had the Refugee Act that was signed by, at that time, he was a congressman, Kennedy, and Pastore from Rhode Island. It was the two of them that wrote the Refugee Act that opened the doors to more Azoreans coming out, because there was a quota. It was always a quota of immigrants coming in. So you met the quota, you couldn't have it. So they undid that quota. And so when you have people here of Azorean that have come over to the United States or Canada, you can trace that back to a specific time. And it goes along with the Capelinos, the eruption of that volcano. That volcano changed the lives of the Azorean people. And I am here. I know I am here because of that quota being opened up. I know I am. It's incredible. So it's still very. I didn't think it would be like, I knew the story, I knew about it and all that, but I had never kind of told. I was always like, I'm an immigrant. I know I'm a Luso-American because I have dual citizenship. I am a citizen of Portugal, but I am a citizen of the United States. I am who I am. I feel like I'm half kind of thing. But one of the places that we recorded, or we filmed for the season 2 is Fayal. We did film in Fayal. And going to that volcano, the Capelinos, going there and going into their museum, which is like a bunker underground. I felt like I was in a 007 movie. And you go underneath and they're showing you all what happened on that island. And then you see the paper, the actual paper that was signed by Kennedy and Pastore that did what it did. And it made me cry. I broke down and cried. We had to stop filming. Because it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks that we were all refugees. We were never called refugees. We never, but we were all refugees. We all came under that. And it made perfect sense on why, when I grew up, you would go into everyone's Portuguese home and there would be always 2 pictures up on the wall. Somewhere in their house, there would be 2 pictures up on the wall. And it would always be the Pope, whatever Pope is there, whatever, the Pope would be up. And there would always be something with Kennedy. There would always be President Kennedy. Wow. And now I get it. It was like, okay.
That's crazy because you always hear, and I would see this too when I lived in New England. If you went into an Irish house, you would see a portrait of Kennedy by the Pope. But
Yes.
I never thought that you would see it in a Portuguese family's house. That is
Oh,
an incredible story, and
yeah.
I'm so glad that there's a Rhode Island connection to that as well with Pastore. I I'm trying in my brain. I'm trying to think back. I think he was governor at one point, but he must have been a congressman
Yes.
to sponsor that bill
Yes.
with
With
John
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
fascinating.
like, you grow up, you hear about it, you know about it. But when I was actually there,
Mm, mm.
oh boy.
Well, let me take you back to New Bedford real quick because
I'm sorry, Brett.
no, it's that was a wonderful story, and I'm so glad you told it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the culture, the Portuguese culture in New Bedford, because I think I told you this the last time I had you on, Maria. All of the things that you say ring very true to me because my girlfriend tells very similar stories about growing up in an Italian neighborhood in an Italian family. And the stories that you tell also sound very similar to the stories that her father would tell about growing up in Providence. And, everything's in one neighborhood and you don't have to go very far. And also, one thing that I thought about when I watched your show was how culture, your neighborhood, your society, your social group revolves around the church. And one of the big social aspects of the year would be these specific feast days for the church.
Yes.
And in your show, you went to the Feast of the Blessed Sacrament in New Bedford, which
Yes,
looked
I
like
did.
a great party. Tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
Well, it is the largest Portuguese festival in the US. It is the largest Portuguese festival in the US. It is a Feast of the Blessed Sacrament. It was put together by the people who came from Madeira, and they continued this festival they had in Madeira here in New Bedford as giving thanks for them arriving here safely, and what is first a religious feast in all of it. It really is a giving thanks. Then it became, let's celebrate. And it is 4 days of celebrating, and it's celebrating the Madeiran culture, the Portuguese culture. So it is dances and music and singing, and in between you've got the Madeira wine, which, as we know, there is history behind Madeira wine, and that our forefathers toasted with Madeira wine when they signed the Declaration of Independence, which is incredible. And there's the Carne de Spit, it's the Bull de Caco, which is what they all dishes that come from Madeira, but it is all original. This is the thing of it, is that it is a celebration and giving thanks. And the committee for the Blessed Sacrament, the Madeira, the committee that takes care of it, they raise money. Whatever money they raise on these feasts, they give back to the community, which is all within that giving thanks and giving back, which is beautiful. And I got to film with them before, like a few days before the feast began. And it's a fraternal order, and they were just the most amazing men, and so giving, and so they were just incredible. They were just incredible. And the love that they have for their culture, the love that they have for the community, the love that they have for for doing good and for giving back is just, it's just beautiful. They're just really wonderful, wonderful committee. I loved it. I loved it. And then to go back and to hear all the fun of it. And we're looking at so many people that come from everywhere for the feast. And they come from Canada, they come from Portugal, they come from everywhere in the United States. It's like a homecoming. It's a homecoming. And so everyone goes back. They'll pick, those dates to have vacation so that they can be down here, so they can be at the Madeira feast, the Blessed Sacrament feast. So it is so, so special. And I had to film it. I had to film it. It is absolutely an important part of our community. It's an important part of our culture. And it's something that, some people go, oh, I hear about it, but I really don't know about it if they're not around here. You know what I mean? Or if they think they know it, but they haven't seen it. I would hope that once they see it on the screen, they're going to go, oh, I'd like to be part of that. Because it is so much fun.
And everybody's welcome. So, you don't have to be Portuguese. You don't have to be from Madeira to enjoy it.
No.
And it looks like a great party.
It is a great party. And then they have like certain mornings, like Sunday morning and, Saturday morning, where they have like specifically for family, like, so you can bring your children. They have some rides. It's really adorable. So they really open it up for everyone. You're right. You don't have to be, well, as they said, when you're there, you're Madeiran. So everyone is Madeiran when you're there. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's a really great thing.
No, because people from Madeira know how to have fun.
Oh,
There's one thing I've learned being here in Portugal. You go to a Madeiran party, you're going to have a good time.
Oh, you really do.
I want to talk about a dish that you made on your show called bacalhau à Brás.
Yes.
And you made that in New Bedford at a cafe called Tia Marie's.
Tia Maria's.
Yeah, I said Tina. Tia Maria's.
That's okay.
And this is a really important dish in Portuguese culinary culture. So I thought I'd let you talk about it a little bit on the podcast and tell people about it and why it's so important.
Well, codfish is salted cod, I should say. Salted cod is the Portuguese dish. I mean, salted cod is the king. You have, 365. Well, I have a recipe book that's over 1,000 recipes of bacalhau. So, and just like the Italians, or, bacalhau is a part of our eating, the salted cod. And the bacalhau has a history behind it. Again, we had our Portuguese, I should say, codfish, even though codfish is a Portuguese equivalent of the dish. You can say Portugal is where all the dishes are. That is the main thing, is cod. It is not fished in Portuguese waters. So it's a national dish that is not a fish that can be caught in our waters. So what the Portuguese sailors had to do, fishermen, is they had to go to Newfoundland in Canada, off the coast of Canada, as well as Norway. And so the bacalhau that you buy, like the best bacalhau you can buy, will come from either Canada or Norway. Those are the best. You can't get any better. And that is where our fish comes from. And then, of course, because of the trek back to the mainland, you salted it. And what they would do is they would salt it, and the sun would dry it out. They don't do that now. Now it's a whole different process and stuff. But that is how they were able to preserve the fish, to bring it into, and hence the reason we have salted cod. There is the dish is just history in a plate, because it is us. It is who we are. It is our dish. I can't say anymore. Cod is king. Cod is king.
It's so true. You go into the grocery stores here and you'll see the salted dried cod literally stacked up as tall as I am. I'm over 6 feet tall, and you'll
Yeah.
see it all stacked up there. And and there's these big, I don't even know how to describe it because it's like 3 feet of cod that
Yeah.
that the ladies will pick up and they'll, buy it, and then they go home and they'll rehydrate it and they'll make these dishes with the bacalhau. It's really quite extraordinary.
It really is. And there's a way to pick your salted cod. And I always tell people you've got to take the dried piece of fish, because that, people don't know sometimes that we see our on a plate, but you really never see it like beforehand, how it looks beforehand. But for those that are shopping for bacalhau, you're going in, you're going to find these, separated or in piles, and you literally go through those piles. You just, you can't be shy. You got to go and you got to go through it to see which one has the good belly. You want that meat. You want that belly to be, the center of it, to have a nice amount of fish there. Because when you rehydrate it, when you take out that salt and you rehydrate it all, it's going to puff up some. You're going to have a little bit more of what you think you have there. But the key is to see how much you have to begin with, and you need to look at that belly and see if how much is there. And there are some that are very flat. You don't see anything. You don't see a belly. Everything is you're not going to get much fish out of that one. You'll have fish, but it won't be depending on what you're making. If you're making something where you're going to be shredding it, it's okay. You know what I mean? You can buy little bits and pieces here and there because it doesn't matter. You're not going to be cutting it and putting it on a plate to look nice. But if you're cutting it, if you're roasting it, if you're doing it in the oven, you're doing it in one piece, it depends on what you're doing with it. You want that extra, in it. I know plenty of people now who, now can go to the freezer, even at the Portuguese markets here, and already buy, portion-sized bacalhau that's been, rehydrated, and it's done, and then all it's ready is you need to defrost it and cook it. I like the whole process. I like picking them up. I like looking at it. I like to see how I want it cut, because you can have the person behind the counter cut it for you. So what am I going to do with it? Depending on how I want it cut. Do I want the sides cut off first, those flaps cut out first, and then the center cut out into portions, so that I know if I make a stew, I'm going to have this set up. So I already have it set, you know what I mean? In portion size. And then I like coming home. What I do now is I desalt it. I bring it home. I desalt the whole thing. I only do it for 2 days because I like my fish salty. There are people who do 3-4 days. It's too much for me, because now you're taking out all the salt, and then you've got to add back salt, and it just makes no sense to me. I like that flavor, I like that briny. I like all of that flavor in it, and so I do it for 2 days. I make sure it's desalted, and then I put it in portion size in freezer bags or freezer containers, and I freeze it. And then when I'm ready to use it, all I have to do is defrost it. I don't have to go through the process of desalting and doing all that stuff. It's already done for me. And then I can cook it. Then I can boil it, then I can, and use it for, little pieces, or I can roast them. I can, pan sear it, or whatever the heck I feel like doing. But that's how I like to do it. I like to desalt it myself. Personally, I don't like buying that already done. I don't know how they did it. I'm not going to go that way. I like the extra work.
So you talked about all these different bacalhau recipes. What exactly is the bacalhau à brás?
Bacalhau à brás is you have your bacalhau, your fresh cod. Your salted cod. that you have bought. You can actually buy bits and pieces of it already. And that's really the cheapest way to go, especially if you're going to do a bacalhau brás, because it's small little pieces that you're going to be breaking it up into. So you can buy small pieces and it's already done for you, and it's a lot cheaper than buying a whole big thing of fish, just a FYI. And so what you do is you desalt it, you have it, you cook it, so that you're able to now break it up into small pieces and kind of leave it aside. Then you have potatoes, and you're going to cut the potatoes into almost like French fry. And you're going to fry them up, and you're going to leave that aside. And there are some people who buy like potato chips in straw form, like a straw potatoes kind of thing. And some people like using that instead of frying because it's already done. But once again, I like the old school. I like the potatoes. I want to make sure that it's done the traditional way. And so you make sure that you cut that up, you cut your potatoes, you fry them, they're all done, you leave it aside. And then what you're going to do in a frying pan, you're going to saute your onions and in olive oil and some butter. I always like to do the both. One of the tips that I always got from someone that I went, yes, that makes perfect sense, is you put your olive oil, you put your olive oil and your butter in a frying pan. And when your butter is melted, that is the time to put in the onions to fry, because that's when the oil is hot. You want to make sure that your oil is hot enough to be able to fry it. And because if you put it in too soon, your potatoes can be soggy, and you don't want that. Yep. It'll absorb more oil. So you always want to make sure that it's a nice fry where you don't, oversaturate your potatoes. So you do that, put that off this, you put your onions in, you do your sauteing, you put some garlic in there, lots of garlic. I love that garlic. And then you're going to be adding in your cod that you already have pretty much boiled, and you've put into small little pieces because you've deskinned it, deboned it, and put it all in little pieces. And now you add that in there and saute it together really quickly. And then you're going to add your fried potatoes in that also. And last but not least, you're going to add scrambled eggs that you've scrambled, like you've have on the side, let's say, depending on how many people you're making it for. You've got your eggs on the side in a bowl. You've mixed it. You've added salt, pepper, and all kinds of seasonings in there. If you want some extra spice, you can always put that in the eggs. That's how I like it. And you mix that all up together, and you throw that into the frying pan. And now you're cooking that egg, which becomes a scrambled egg with the cod, with the fried potatoes and the onions and the garlic and all of that in there. And of course, you add your salts, your seasonings to what you prefer on there, on that. And I salt all along the way. I salt with the onions, then I salt a little bit after, because you want to build on all those flavors, and it goes into it all. And then once that egg is cooked, everything has kind of put together. You put that on a plate, and then you toss on top. You cut up some fresh parsley, and you add that on top. And it is a delicious, amazing dish. And it's that simple. But when you get it, you look at it and you go, oh my God, what the heck is this? Like, there's fried potatoes, there's egg, there's codfish, there's a little hit, right. There's a kick. Where's that kick from? Oh my goodness, it's so fresh. Oh, it's the parsley. Oh, the garlic. Oh, it's like it has all of these flavors that come into it that are just incredible. Just incredible. And I made the dish, number one, with Jessica, who is the owner of Tia Maria's. Number one, it's her mother's dish. It was her grandmother taught her mother, and her mother taught her. And it is one of my husband's favorite dishes. When we are there at that restaurant and they have it on special, they don't have it all the time, but when they have it on special, that is what he gets. That is his favorite dish. And so I got to make it with her. And then we served her parents, which it was so beautiful because Jessica is just a really amazing woman. She had in her mind what she wanted to do. She did it, and she's still doing it. But her family is what, is in the center of it all. And to be able to make that dish with her, which was very special for so many reasons. And then for me and her for me to share it and send it there and have them taste it and go, how is it? And they're like, this is perfect. You did it perfectly. It was like, and to see them talk about Jessica and how proud they are of her. But everything that she does, the family is always in the center of it all. Everything is in the center. That is what motivates her and what brings her to do what she does. It is this, her story, her family's story, and it's all in food. It's all in her food, which is just incredible, And her parents are the sweetest people, just the sweetest. Yeah. It was a beautiful, sweet moment to be able to do that.
Well, Maria, we've talked about these great dishes in New Bedford. We've talked a little bit about the Azores. I want to talk more about the Azores and the new season of your show, Maria's Portuguese Table. Would you be able to come back next week and do another episode with us?
Oh, I'd love that. I so enjoy talking about all of this with you. So yes, that would be a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, there you go. Maria tells such heartwarming and emotional stories. I'm always so happy to have her on the show. And like I said, she'll be back next week to talk more about season 2 of Maria's Portuguese Table. During our talk, Maria brought up the Azorean Refugee Act of 1958, co-sponsored by Senators John Kennedy from Massachusetts and John Pastore from Rhode Island. And I mentioned during that conversation that since I lived in Rhode Island, I knew the name John Pastore and thought he was governor of the state, which it turns out he was from 1945 to 1950 before he was elected to the Senate. So I just wanted to clear that little bit of business up. I also found out that Pastore was the very first Italian-American elected to the Senate, which is, to me, crazy that it took until 1950 for that to happen, but there it is. Okay, that's your Rhode Island history lesson for today. That's also it for this week. If you enjoyed the show, I've got links to Maria's other appearances on the podcast, as well as the places she talked about on this episode. You can get that in the show notes at radiomisfits.com/DED236. And while you're waiting for next week's show, head over to destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about a pastry from the Portuguese town of Ajatao. Read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I also just posted a video about a very untouristy neighborhood in Lisbon called Alvalade. You can see that by going to destinationeatdrink.com and clicking on the video tab, or going to my YouTube channel at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and a guy who soaks his bacalao in scotch, Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson. I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.